Imagine for a moment a world where all wounds could be stitched with silk and all fevers broken with tablets, where pain bowed to progress and sorrow dissolved in the gleam of laboratory glass. It is the dream of the modern world, to lay every ill upon the operating table and render it mute beneath the scalpel of science. And yet, have we not discovered, to our quiet dismay, that even with all the hospitals and healing hands, there are wounds that refuse to close? A man may be restored in body, but limp still in spirit. A woman may laugh in the hallway, but carry an ache that doctors cannot name. The truth is this: modern medicine has its limits, but the soul has none. There is a realm in us which MRIs cannot photograph and bloodwork cannot decode. A realm as old as Eden, as silent as prayer and as real as breath. This place, call it the heart, the spirit, the inner man, does not respond to penicillin. Its illnesses are older, more cunning. Guilt, fear, shame, bitterness, loneliness, these are the ancient afflictions. They do not show up on charts, but they gnaw at the ribs of kings and beggars alike. The tragedy is not that our physicians fail, but that they are sent into battle unarmed against an invisible enemy. They are taught to treat the flesh, but they cannot speak the language of the soul. And here, in the hush that follows the hum of machines, enters an old psalm, a shepherd's song, sung beneath stars, whispered through valleys of shadow. Psalm 23. It is not tucked into a medical journal or displayed on a prescription pad, and yet it has nursed more hearts than all the hospitals combined. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. In those words lie not information, but transformation. It is they do not explain, they invite, not to knowledge, but to nearness. It would be a grave mistake to assume this psalm is mere comfort for funerals or embroidered niceties for throw pillows. It is a spiritual medicine chest, each line a salve. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures, does not just promise rest, it commands the frantic heart to stop. He restoreth my soul is not a metaphor but a miracle, and though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, is not bravado, it is a declaration of companionship, for thou art with me. In this lies the healing doctors rarely speak of. Not in the removal of all pain, but in the invasion of presence. What is the cure for loneliness, if not love? What is the remedy for anxiety, if not assurance that you are seen, known, and led? The psalm does not deny the valley, it walks us through it. It does not promise a life without shadows. It promises a light that follows us all the days of our life. When the sterile world of clinical care reaches the end of its abilities, Psalm 23 takes the hand and says, I will not leave you here. Come. There is still goodness and mercy ahead. Perhaps that is why this psalm has lived longer than empires and buried more grief than time itself. It does not dazzle, it anchors. It does not fix, it accompanies. It is not the voice of the physician, but the voice of the shepherd. And that, it turns out, may be the truest kind of healing after all. Imagine the kind of wound no scalpel can reach. Not a gash in the flesh, but a tear in the spirit. An ache that does not bleed, yet throbs all the same. This is the sort of ailment no doctor ever truly prepares for. In the shining halls of medicine, symptoms are charted, vitals recorded, diagnoses delivered with clarity. And still, how often do we see patients discharged with their bodies mended, but their hearts untouched? There is something in us deeper than veins and sinews, a place the stethoscope cannot hear. It is here, in this silent sanctuary of the soul, that the oldest medicines still speak. One of them is a song, not a new song, but one sung through ages, across deserts and deathbeds, in prisons and pews. It is not classified as a cure by any modern textbook, yet it has healed more grief than all the pharmacopoeia of man. Psalm 23. At first glance, it may seem like quaint religious poetry, a thing for the sentimental or sorrowful. But read it not with the eyes of academia, but with the eyes of a weary traveler, and you will see it for what it truly is, a lifeline. It begins not with doctrine, but relationship. The Lord is my shepherd. This is not theory, it is nearness. We are not left to navigate life's chaos alone. There is one who walks before, beside, and behind. That single line dismantles the great disease of our age, abandonment. Doctors can prescribe pills to soothe the nerves, but can they offer rest to the soul? He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. These are not just poetic landscapes, they are an antidote to restlessness. The psalm teaches the anxious heart, a rhythm long forgotten, that peace is not a product to be earned, but a place to be led into. And what of the fractured self, splintered by grief or regret? He restoreth my soul, not replaces, restores. Like a craftsman, fitting back together the broken edges of an ancient vase, the shepherd is not discarding us for something better. He makes us whole. But the psalm does not pretend life is painless. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, not if, but though. The valley is not an anomaly, it is a certainty. But, and here lies the power, it is a shadow, not the substance. Death may cast a darkness, but the shepherd casts light. Thou art with me, 4 simple words that shattered despair. Here is the difference between mere comfort and true healing. Not explanation, not escape, but presence. That someone is with you, even as the darkness thickens. In our time, information floods us, yet wisdom runs dry. We hunger for meaning, but are fed only data. Into this famine the psalm speaks again. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies, not after the enemies are gone, but in their presence. The healing here is not in avoidance of hardship, but in the audacity of joy amid it. Who can dine in the face of fear unless they trust the host? And the psalm does not end in the valley. It ends in pursuit. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. What doctor can prescribe mercy? What therapy can guarantee goodness will chase you down? And yet this is the promise not of man, but of God. A promise that our soul, though cracked and weary, is still the object of divine affection. This is the healing no physician can chart. Not the absence of all pain, but the presence of a shepherd who walks us through it, feeds us in it, and restores us beyond it. It is not always dramatic, not always visible, but it is the deepest, surest healing of all. We live in an age of astonishing medical achievement. Diseases that once ravaged entire civilizations are now held at bay by the smallest of pills. We can transplant hearts, map genes, and mend broken bones with quiet precision. The pain of being unseen, the fatigue of meaninglessness, the slow erosion of peace. And it is precisely here, in the deep, unspoken places within us, that a very old text continues to breathe life. Not a formula or a theory, but a psalm, a quiet, steadfast song of healing that doctors rarely mention, yet souls often cling to. Psalm 23. It begins not with what must be done, but with what already is. The Lord is my shepherd. That one line rearranges everything. It declares that you are not alone, not adrift, not abandoned. In a world that often feels like a wilderness, the image of a shepherd evokes protection, direction, and care. The healing starts not by solving your problems, but by knowing you are held in the gaze of someone stronger and wiser. Modern anxiety often springs from the unbearable burden of self-degradation. We are taught to chart our own course, build our own worth, fix our own wounds. But the psalm offers a counter-vision, not independence, but dependence, not as weakness, but as restoration. It continues, He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. These are not the hurried commands of a tyrant, but the tender urgings of one who knows our limits better than we do. Green pastures and still waters are not luxuries, but necessities of the soul. And yet, how often do we rush past them, fueled by a world that never stops? The shepherd leads us not into escape, but into a deeper kind of presence. A rest that interrupts our unrest, a quiet that heals what noise has broken. In this, we find a therapy no clinic offers, peace not as an outcome, but as a gift. Still, the psalm does not pretend life is a stroll through perpetual sunshine. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. It does not say we are spared from the valley, only that we are not alone in it. Healing in this case is not the removal of darkness, but the absence of fear within it. Why? For thou art with me. Here is the true medicine, presence. Not abstract doctrine, but personal closeness. In the valley, where hope is thin and shadows long, the shepherd does not abandon. He walks with us, not ahead, not above, but beside. Fear loses its grip when companionship replaces isolation. And then, remarkably, the psalm shifts. Thou preparest a table before me, in the presence of mine enemies. Not only does the shepherd guide and protect, but he dignifies, he feeds, he hosts, even in the midst of danger or distress. We are not reduced to survival. We are elevated to communion. A table, not a bunker. A feast, not mere scraps. And this is no temporary relief. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. These are not random hopes, but divine pursuits. We are not chased by dread, but by delight. Goodness follows, mercy follows, not just in the bright days, but in the dark ones too. And finally, the psalm lands in a homecoming. I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Healing at last finds its full form, not in a pill or a plan, but in a place, belonging, a return. We do not wander endlessly, we are being led somewhere good. The psalm is not just words, it is a journey, and for many it is the most necessary kind of healing, the one that touches what medicine cannot reach. In an era where progress is praised and science revered, we often assume that healing begins and ends in the domain of medicine. And to be sure, we owe much to modern doctors, the menders of bones, the silencers of infection, the guardians of breath and blood. But beneath all of this, beneath the antiseptic brilliance of hospitals and the hum of machines, lies a quieter truth. Not all illness wears a name. Some hurts do not show up in tests. Some wounds cannot be stitched. The soul, though unseen, can suffer just as deeply as the body, and perhaps more stubbornly. And when that suffering arises, there is an ancient balm few think to reach for anymore. Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. With those words begins not a theory, but a relationship. Not a philosophy, but a presence. The world tells us to achieve security through effort, through planning, through endless doing. But this line speaks of resting in the care of another. The shepherd does not simply watch, he knows. He does not simply guide, he leads. And from that assurance flows something deeper than comfort. It is trust, the kind that dissolves fear before it becomes panic. The soul does not need to know every step ahead. It only needs to know the one who walks before. From that trust comes rest. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. There is no force here, only invitation. In a world where exhaustion is a badge of honor and stillness is mistaken for laziness, these lines sound almost absurd, but they speak to the deepest truth of all, that rest is not a weakness, but a necessity for restoration. Green pastures do not mean an easy life, they mean a nourished soul. Still waters do not mean the absence of trouble, they mean the presence of peace, even when the world roars outside. These words do not describe a vacation, they describe healing, the kind that realigns the very rhythms of life. And still, the psalm does not shy away from the hardest realities. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. That valley is not hypothetical, it is real. We all walk it, sooner or later, through loss, grief, illness, fear. But here, healing is found not in the removal of the valley, but in the companionship within it. Thou art with me. These 4 words are among the most potent in all of Scripture. They do not change the terrain, but they transform the journey. The shepherd does not promise a detour, he promises presence. And sometimes that is all the healing we need. To know we are not alone. Then comes the astonishing twist. The psalm does not merely lead us through danger, it leads us to dignity. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Not after victory, but in the very presence of opposition, the shepherd sets a table. This is not survival, it is celebration. The soul, far from being abandoned, is honored. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. The world may measure healing in absence of symptoms, but here we see it in overflow. Abundance, not just sufficiency, grace, not just escape. And so it ends, not in despair, but in pursuit. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. We are not simply wandering forward, we are being followed by goodness, by mercy. The soul is not hunted by fear, but by love. And beyond the years and shadows, I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. This is not just a finale, it is a promise. True healing is not merely a moment of relief, it is a journey home. And for all that medicine can do, and we bless it for that, it is here, in this sacred psalm, that many will find what medicine cannot give. Rest for the soul, hope in the darkness, and the enduring company of a shepherd who never leaves. There are some wounds that don't show. You can't trace them on an X-ray or treat them with antibiotics. They fester in silence, in quiet moments when no one's looking, or in crowded rooms where you feel most alone. In this modern age, with all its advancements and cures, we have grown uncomfortably skilled at ignoring the unseen. We chase after physical health and forget that the soul, too, can suffer, and more quietly, more stubbornly than the body ever could. And when the soul is weary, when the spirit is threadbare, what it needs is not merely explanation or escape. It needs presence. It needs poetry that tells the truth. It needs Psalm 23. When it begins with "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want," it cuts through the noise of modern striving. The soul, exhausted from the pressure to prove, to produce, to perform, suddenly hears a deeper voice. Not the voice of culture demanding more, but the voice of God saying, "You lack nothing." This is not fantasy, it is foundation. It speaks to identity. The world tells you to chase after safety, meaning, and this psalm says you already belong to someone who provides all three. The shepherd is not a distant figure. He is present, attentive, and intimately aware of your need. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. These lines don't just paint a peaceful scene, they offer a divine interruption. Rest is not a luxury, it is a discipline, and in this case, a gift. We are made to lie down, not because we've earned it, but because we are known. In green pastures, the sheep lie, not because the world is safe, but because the shepherd is near. Still waters are not just peaceful, they are restorative. The healing here comes from trust, not from circumstance. The heart learns to breathe again in the presence of quiet, under the care of someone who leads gently. He restoreth my soul, he leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Restoration is a sacred word. It does not mean replacement, it means mending. It means taking what is cracked and making it whole again. The world offers distractions for the soul's discomfort. God offers direction. The shepherd leads along paths not just of comfort, but of righteousness. Paths that shape us, paths that are good even when they are not easy. And he does this for his name's sake, meaning this is not dependent on our merit, but on his character. The healing here is not transactional, it is relational. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. This is the heart of the psalm, and perhaps its most powerful medicine. The valley is inevitable, shadows will fall, but fear is not inevitable, because presence changes everything. The shepherd does not remove the valley, he walks in it with us. That companionship is where the healing begins, not in escape from sorrow, but in the quiet courage that comes from being held. The staff does not erase the dark, but it steadies the steps within it, and in that there is peace. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. What kind of God feeds us when fear surrounds us? What kind of shepherd anoints in the middle of a battlefield? The healing here is found in the abundance that shows up exactly where the world expects emptiness. It is not just enough, it is overflow. The cup runs over not because the enemies are gone, but because grace has arrived. We are honored in the middle of hardship. We are nourished where we expected to fight. And that is a healing few ever consider. And so, as the psalm concludes, surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. This is not a vague hope. It is a steady promise. Goodness and mercy are not just ideas, they are companions. They follow, they pursue, they remain, and the soul, long exiled in the wilderness of worry, finally finds home. Not in perfect health, but in perfect care. Not in the absence of sorrow, but in the unshakable presence of a shepherd who never lets go. That, perhaps, is the truest healing of all.